So we've been looking at some of the clan mechs in Battletech. We've been pushing up mech reviews focusing on some iconic clan mechs and various clan tech. That's been sandwiched with anchor points, the inner sphere, exploring the mechs from the Game of Armored Combat starter set that was recently released. Every mech in there is fantastic. Every mech in there has a well-defined role. Excellent choices. You can build a really powerful battle group, two really potent and powerful lances out of that set. So we have two very unique time periods in there. And then in terms of the Battletech narrative, in terms of the Battletech in-game universe, there's a very, very thin slice where the clans have not launched the invasion, but they're out there gathering information. The inner sphere is not aware of the clan's activities, but something a little suspect is going on. And in this podcast, we're going to take a look at the Imp, what the urban mech perhaps aspires to be, and how tactically this is kind of an interesting mech. So this idea in the narrative, Wolf's Dragoons being actually stealth clan and being bankrolled by the clans, being interjected into the inner sphere as a premier mercenary company under the guise of gathering information to report back to the clans. So we see them appearing with a full complement of mechs, dropships, personnel, automated stations and factories, and some mechs in perfect condition that have not been seen in the inner sphere for 75, 100 years. And in the narrative, this is dismissed possibly through politics, possibly through the fact that maybe the Dragoons had discovered some lost tech, and the various houses that were buying up the contracts, they certainly weren't going to ask any questions, right? C-bills talk. Who knows? As long as you're fighting on my side, it's all good. And within the Dragoons, there were a number of imp mechs. And what we see here is an assault mech at 100 tons with good armor, with the appropriate armor maybe slightly above based on the tonnage and based on an assault mech, but a curious mix of clan and inner sphere tech. So it puts the imp at an interesting place, and we're going to explore that duality in a second, but let's crunch the numbers and run down the weapons. So the first thing we see are two ER PPCs. This is going to push out higher damage, longer range, and with the two PPCs, the ER PPCs, if you are facing off against other dual or triple PPC mechs in the inner sphere, and we see a lot of classical mechs, like the Warhammer, like the Marauder, like the Awesome, all favorite mechs of mine, they're outclassed. These high-end heavy and assault mechs, they're outclassed by the imp. It can hit further, it can hit stronger, but that comes with the offset of heat. It doesn't quite have the true heat management of the clans. So you're not going to be able to cook off both of those every turn without immunity. Possibly if you're not moving. Possibly if you stagger your fire, you could fire twice a turn, let heat cool down, then go back to one. So there is this idea of, yes, we have advanced tech, but much like the inner sphere, I have to watch, or the mech warrior has to watch the heat buildup. But that slight advantage, because remember, at this point, when the imp is introduced, if we're following the narrative, the invasion hasn't started. The inner sphere hasn't seen the clans, and that type of tech has not been retrofitted, either captured or evolved, already back into the inner sphere kind of classic mechs. A great example that I often utilize is the Stalker. Inner sphere Stalker is a beast of a mech. It has the duality of multiple range brackets. It has the redundancy in that it has two or more of each weapon to fire out there. It's got the armor. It puts out a lot. But heat is a problem. Damage output, we have to watch. As soon as you upgrade a Stalker with recovered clan tech, or you advance the timeline to post-invasion, and you have a lot of these mechs being restored closer or perhaps to the Star League era, the Stalker becomes so much more potent. The Stalker becomes so much more fearsome, and it's almost like you're exploring a completely new mech. But going back to that brief corridor, that brief time period in there, the Imp has an advantage. Now we move down to the pulse lasers. We start opening up with large and medium pulse lasers. We have a long-range missile pack. So what you see is this idea at long range, we're going to hunt with the ERPPCs. When we punch through, we're going to take the LRM-15 and try to get a couple of crits, try to seek based on the cluster spread, maybe hit something lucky at that long range, blow that mech up before it gets closer. If we have to switch to the medium range and the short range, well, now we're just going to start firing with those lasers, that ClanTech lasers. But curiously, it finishes up the short range bracket with inner sphere medium lasers. And I always found this a little bit interesting. I understand what it was trying to do. Let's look at the Warhammer and compare and contrast it as an iconic mech. The Warhammer starts out with the PPCs at long range. It then dances at medium range with the lasers. And then the idea, when it gets to close range, it's going to use the machine guns, it's going to use the lasers, it's going to use the short-range missile pack to just really kind of soak you with everything that it possibly can. For the short-range role, the Imp has the medium lasers assigned. Now, I know there's variants. I know you can customize your stuff. I just wonder why the stock has that. I would have dropped those lasers. I don't have the Mech Lab open. I can't crunch the exact numbers. But the couple of times that I played the Imp, it's always been stock. And it's been an interesting machine to play, but I find myself wishing maybe I had some more heat sinks or some more armor or a different configuration, just dropping those. They seem out of place. I understand that they're the close range perspective of it, but it's an interesting mismatch. Outside of that time period, and we're looking at the stock introduction of the Imp, once the invasion is underway and you start getting access to clan technology, either by playing the clans or perhaps a trial of possession, or now you're retrofitting mid to late invasion, you're retrofitting clan tech into inner sphere, the Imp is kind of a Frankenstein type mech. It doesn't hold its own in either camp. It's kind of a mishmash in there. It was an advantage for what it was in that time period, in that very, very focused, narrow role. And that's not to say it's not a fun machine to play, but it needs to be pre-invasion. It needs to be bringing that tech, that base level, up against the full fury of the clans or up against retrofitted inner sphere. It needs a little bit of work on itself. Your thoughts on that? This is one of those mechs that, for whatever reason, I don't see in play that much. And I know in Battletech, there's only so many games we can play. There's a lot of amazing mechs out there. We all have our favorite, our classic mechs that for whatever reason we love. Some are quirky, some are really, really good machines. Some are just mechs that have been in your collection for so long you have to play them. And then there's only so many battle value points to go around. So I understand that there's concessions to be made. Even if you're playing Alpha Strike, you can only do so much. But that said, the Imp isn't seen as much. It's kind of standing out there a little bit like the Irby mech, just wishing to be on the table more. Your thoughts, your feedback, your comments on the Imp, and out of curiosity, do you have one in your collection? Do you have one in your stable, your mech stable? Do you play it regularly? Have you played it every now and then? What role do you feel it occupies in the game?